Let's talk about the new Cyborg Choir palette from Adept Cosmetics. It is definitely a very springy theme. As you can tell by the outside packaging, it is the standard Adept Cosmetics beautiful fall leather bound and stitched packaging. It feels super high quality, and this palette does retail for $79. It is more on the expensive side for their palettes because it does have 10 special shimmer shadows in here, with the bottom row being all matte, so there are more shimmers, and there are 4 holographic eyeshadows in here, so I'm sure that that also plays a part in the price of this palette. And I do have an affiliate code with Adept Cosmetics, which will save you 10% off this palette if you're interested in it. And if you use my code, thank you so much for supporting me. I do really enjoy the color story, and I love that there are some deepening up shades, pretty much 3 deepening up shades in this palette, but especially 77 and Boring Circuit, which is this one you could use to really deepen up both of these shades as well. So the 4 holographic shadows in here are Binary Beat, Android Aura, Mechanical Muse, and Pixelated Pulse. And I believe the multi-chrome in here is Digital Harmony. And then there are some kind of regular shimmers. They have a little bit of a shift to them, some not. And I will be showing you detailed swatches of each of the shades and going into what does it feel like, what does it look like, how's the holographic particles in it, etc. And this is not the first time Adept is doing holographic eyeshadows. They did have a holographic multi-chrome in the Minka palette, which was so beautiful, very smooth and very shifty, truly a beautiful holographic shade. Right off the bat, the hollows are definitely different from that shade in terms of formulation and how the hollow looks in the shade. So, and I will further explain that in the in-depth section part of the swatches of each of the shimmers, but for right now, I'm just going to be showing you what all the shimmers look like together, as well as all the mattes. For the most part, you do have topper shades in here. The only really opaque are Mechanical Muse and Pixelated Muse, and the rest of them are quite layerable, but also majority of them you will only layer them to a certain point, especially Binary Beat and Android Aura. I think those are kind of the most iridescent. Also Digital Harmony a little bit as well. As for the comparisons to the shimmer shades, I did include some non-holographic shades to compare color-wise with some of these, but just keep that in mind that even if they are similar, maybe they don't have the hollow, or maybe it's actually vice versa. Maybe they are similar, but they do have hollow, because I think holographic eyeshadows and multi-chromes have become quite popular, and you see them a lot between being in eyeshadow palettes as well as single eyeshadows. So let's get into the in-depth swatches of each of the shimmer shades, then comparison swatches, then 2 looks, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts at the end of the video. Here's a Binary Beat, and this is an iridescent holographic eyeshadow for sure. It has a little bit of a shift. It has a really beautiful bright blue shift straight on. It looks almost electric. We've definitely seen something like this before. And as I go on an angle, you can see that the holographic pigment is almost like tiny little flakes that are kind of separate from the main kind of shade, the smoothness of the shade. They do look like they're a bit separated, and this causes them to be a little bit more kind of spread out and uneven. Next up is Android Aura, also a shifty holographic shadow, and again the hollow looks like it's separated from the base pigment, and both of these shades feel a little bit flaky, but they do completely smooth out. They're quite sheer. This one has a little bit more opacity to it. This is a really beautiful light pink, and it shifts to an orange to a yellow. Onto Laser Lights. I don't believe this is a multi-chrome or a duochrome. It does have a bit of dimensionality to it though, because it is so reflective. And formulation wise, I definitely think this is the closest to the signature Adept formula. So think of the shades that are really sparkly in the Flying Fiddles palette. Absolutely love this one. Next is Voltage Violet, and this is same thing texture wise, formulation wise as Laser Lights. This one has a little bit of that shift to it. I would say this is a duochrome. It is extra sparkly, beautiful. Feels a little bit drier to the touch like Laser Lights. Here's Mechanical Muse, definitely a shifty holographic shade, really beautiful blue that shifts to a purple. This one feels smoother than the previous 2 holographic shades and also less flaky, and the halo effect also just seems a little bit more blended in with the base pigment, so it's a little bit more uniform throughout, which I definitely think I prefer it in here. And it could potentially be because this shade is a little bit on the darker side, so it is possible that the flakies just do kind of blend in a little bit better. Robo Rose, and this shade is just as it is named, definitely a rosy pink, and it shifts all the way to like a peach and yellow, and it does actually, I feel like it's not really capturing here, but it does almost look slightly lime green on a really harsh angle when the light is just really hitting the edge of it there on a curve. This one's very sparkly. I think this shade is also similar formulation wise to Laser Lights and Voltage Violet. Next up is Pixelated Pulse. This is another holographic shifting shade, and the difference between this shade and Mechanical Muse is this one is darker, more of a true denim blue, and it also does shift to a purple, so I feel like maybe we didn't need both of the shades. And formulation wise, definitely also very similar to Mechanical Muse, not as flaky. It almost feels just very slightly kind of like you can kind of move the pigment around if you really push down in the pan, but it's not necessarily like oily or squishy. And this one, the holographic effect is also a bit more evenly spread out, just like in Mechanical Muse, but you can at a really harsh angle see the particles. Next up is Digital Harmony, really beautiful multi-chrome shade. I believe this one is the truly only multi-chrome in here. It does say on the website that there's only one multi-chrome shade, so I believe it's this one because this one does really shift the whole spectrum. Definitely seen a shade like this previously. It's got that pink straight on look with a tealish green undertone, and it shifts to yellow all the way down to a lime green. It's definitely super shifty. It's extremely smooth and really beautifully metallic. However, it is quite squishy in the pan. It does move around a lot. I definitely would not be putting this anywhere near my crease area, really only maybe on the top of my lid, but this shade most likely will crease on me. Next is Cybernetic Spark, and I would say this arguably is the most unique shade in this palette. It is so stunning. I had a very hard time trying to find something like this to compare with it, because when it's swatched, I think that you're like, oh yeah, there's a couple of shades like this that remind me of it, but in the pan, it looks completely like nothing else that I have in the pan. It's just such a surprise of a green pop and then a shift to blue and purple. It is such a beautiful, vibrant, super metallic shade. However, it is extremely squishy in the pan. It's very oily to the touch, spread really nicely because of that, and it is super metallic because of that, but definitely not something I could really use on the lid or anywhere near my crease because this would crease on me. Very similar in formulation to Digital Harmony. Onto the last shimmer, Cyber Symphony. This is also a squishy shade, so just like the previous two. So there are 3 squishy shades in the palette, and this is a really beautiful, very vibrant, lighter yellow, and I don't think I really see a shift in it. It's just a really beautiful yellow. I think you could definitely sheer this one out quite a bit. Taking 7, and I'm going to put that into the inner crease. And this shade from swatching felt very hard pressed. and definitely very light. Not the best, kind of really pale, almost neon yellow that I've used for sure, but this is quite a bit of building up, and it did build up. Next, taking a Robotic Fusion. This one's definitely a bit more pigmented. I'm just popping that into I feel like I'm blending away the yellow. So I feel like you're gonna have to really use that yellow shade in a very particular manner. So I'm just gonna wipe off this brush the best I can, and I'm gonna go back in with 7. See if I can kind of build it. Nah. It's, again, the tendency of these kinds of shades, so it is to be expected, but it is unfortunate. Picked up Synthetic Sound Wave on Refer 13, and I'm gonna put that onto the outer corner. I like to usually first kind of tap it down, and then we'll start blending it out. And I'm bringing it underneath the lower lash line as well. And then I'm wiping off my brush, and I'm gonna go back in and just go over the edges. And then I'm gonna take just a little bit more, just to make sure I didn't miss a spot down here. I feel like this shade is gone. Do you see that? I'm definitely gonna use a different primer next time on the other eye. I used the McGrath primer. I really don't think this is the primer for this. I'm gonna go in with my pinky with number 7. Sometimes when a shade isn't working, you can do that, and it does help. That definitely helped. But this is kind of like a last resort type of situation. But like now it took away Robotic Fusion. I am not having a good time, y'all. But anyways, I think this is pretty good. I'm just gonna take the Game Beauty EO5 brush, one of my favorites, and I'm going into Boring Circuit, and I'm just gonna put that right up against my lash line on the top and bottom, just ever so slightly. And then I'm gonna go back to Refer 13, and I'm just gonna go and start blending it. I feel like that's pretty good. Picked up Android Aura, and I'm kind of wondering if I want to use a glitter primer or not. I kind of want to just see if I don't have to. Okay, so this way you'll get a very, very scattered kind of look. And I definitely see the separation of the holographic particles, and I feel like I do have a little bit of fallout. And then I'm going to take, let's see, what inner corner. I'm just going to go for Binary Beat. Also a little bit flaky, probably better off with a tacky primer. Yeah, okay. I would definitely use a tacky primer with this next, because the hollow particle is just really kind of flying around. And I have quite a bit of fallout, which thankfully I was going to be redoing my under eye area anyway. There we go. I was able to get rid of it, so that's good. But I wonder how this would wear throughout the day. I would be very skeptical. I feel like it's very, the hollow flecks are just having a mind of their own. So I went over the center of my lid with a little bit of the Davina glitter primer, and I put on Android Aura over it again. I have so much hollow particle fallout, so don't be like me. And definitely do your eyes with this palette before your face. I wasn't able to get all the flecks off. They're kind of just embedded in my foundation now, so heads up with that one. For sure, tacky primer, do your eyes before your face. And here's a look at the finished look. So this time I primed with the Icing Primer from Glamlight. Right off the bat, I'm taking 77 on an angle. And it's just gonna create like a super smoky wing. Not like precise like I usually do. More like super blown out. I'm gonna try to layer one of the hollow darker shades over it, and I'm definitely going to use a glitter primer. And I'm just taking it underneath the lower lash line and then just feathering it out and up a little bit, and just putting down a little bit more as well, just a bit more in here, and then just kind of flicking it outwards and then up a little bit so it's kind of winged out. And then I'm not really sure if I want to use anything to blend it out. I totally could if I think I'm just gonna use, oh my god, where did I put it away? I'm just gonna take some setting powder and just go over the edges just to really make sure I'm blurring it. And I think that blended really nicely. I feel like I want to just go in with a little bit more, just even closer to my lash line. So I'm going to take more 77 and just really pack it on here and underneath. And then I'm going to take this brush and just blend it. There we go. And then blend it a little bit here just so there's no harsh edge. And I'm taking Robotic Fusion, and I'm just gonna pop that right in the crease and just slowly kind of blend it just a little bit into the dark blue. Using a little bit of the Divina Specular Sparkle and Shimmer Primer, I'm just gonna put it right where the wing is and a little bit underneath the lower lash line too. And I think I'm going to take Pixelated Pulse. I'm just picking it up on this brush, which is picking up pretty nicely because it does have a little bit of the glue on it. And I'm just going to tap it a little bit underneath the lower lash line where I put down the primer. And just going to kind of feather it out there just a little bit more. So pretty. I can really see the hollow a lot. There's definitely some fallout, but I feel like it's not like last time on the other eye. That was a huge mistake. I'm pretty sure they do mention using a primer with their shimmer shades on their website. So that looks like literally a galaxy on my eyelid, which I love that. So what do I want to see? I think I want to use Laser Lights. No, Ultraviolet. So I'm just going in with a little bit more of the Divina primer and just gonna tap it on. For this, I want to cover a larger area, right, all at once. So I'm going to use a bigger brush. So this is like a Karla Cosmetics brush. I'm just going to use the clean side, and I'm taking Voltage Violet, and it's just going right here. Ooh, so pretty. This is more of their typical formula. And then I think on the inner corner, I'm just going to use my pinky. I'm going to take Cyber Symphony and just add, the shade is really pigmented, but this one is a little bit like squishy, so I don't think I'll be able to really use it, you know, like anywhere near my crease there. Here's the second finished look. So my initial thoughts on the palette kind of vary a little bit. If you want to purchase this palette, because it is an expensive palette, it's going to completely depend on what you're looking for, what your preference of eyeshadow formulas is, as well as what type of eyelids you have. So right off the bat, I can tell you I will not be able to use these 3 shades on the lid until maybe, you know, a few months from now, maybe a year from now. If they do dry out a little bit and they'll be a little bit less emollient, then I think I'll be able to dip into them for putting them more like onto my lid or a little bit even into my crease. But these are very, very emollient, very squishy in the pan. They feel almost oily, and that is just not my favorite formula in general. But also I know Adept has done that plenty of times in their previous palettes, which is why I was so excited about the Flying Fiddles palette, because there was no squishy shades or really emollient shades in there. I really like their formula that's just a tiny bit textured, but it smooths out completely, and it is just so beautifully sparkly. I think they do that formula really, really well, and the shades that are like that formula are Laser Lights and Voltage Violet for sure, and a little bit of Robo Rose, I think a little bit too, but especially these two, I feel like these are like Adept's best formula. So that's already a con for me. If there's something really, really squishy, really emollient, really oily, I just immediately, like, that knocks the palette down a little bit for me because I do have hooded oily lids. So I think if you have deep set eyes, and I'm going to put up a picture on what I'm talking about because I want to make sure you understand what kind of eye shape I'm specifically talking about. If you have hooded lids, if there's skin under your brow that touches once you relax your lids like this, if it touches the top of your lid, you will probably experience some sort of creasing with more emollient shades because it's like the product is just getting like right in between there. And if you think about like really anything, if you put cream somewhere and then you go like this, you're gonna have like a crease of cream here because it's just gonna get kind of stuck there. It's gonna pile on there a little bit. But if you have lids where there's kind of space between the top section of your brow, like under your brow and then your lid, and they don't touch, then I think you'll be completely fine with these kinds of more emollient formulas. So really, again, just totally depends. I just want to give you all the information on this palette so that you can decide based on all the things if this is something you would like to invest in and add to your collection. And then onto the holographic eyeshadows. I feel like I'm not loving them. I think I was expecting these to be like the shade in the Minka palette because that one is so beautiful. It's like a very smooth metallic multi-chrome that also has hollow in it, and the hollow is really, really obvious in it, and it just feels like it's really incorporated into the pigment. And with these in general, it looks like they're kind of larger, hollow, almost flakies that on a really harsh angle. And but this is taken with my phone, and you can see how the hollow particle is separating a little bit from the pigment. I've seen it before plenty of times. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means that the hollow effect is a little bit more scattered, and I definitely recommend using some sort of a tacky primer with these kinds of shades because the hollows will tend to flake off, especially if you have hooded lids and they're kind of rubbing together and you're moving around. Like, it might happen. Not for everyone, of course. It is kind of a little bit of a trial and error. Everyone is different, but something to keep in mind. And I think the hollow is a little bit less obviously separate in the Mechanical Muse and Pixelated Pulse shades because they already have a little bit of a darker color to them. They're a little bit almost, they don't have like a black base to them, but they have a darker base versus these two are pretty sheer. So I'm not exactly in love with them. I will definitely keep trying them out, and I will never use these without a glitter primer. That was totally my bad. I should have used it, but I was like, let me just see, maybe it will kind of smooth out with the pressure on my finger. Definitely not the case, but nevertheless, like, these two shades are so beautiful, and the hollow really just adds a little bit more punch. But I will keep you updated on my thoughts on the hollow shades as I continue using the palette. Now let's talk about the mattes. I definitely think their matte formula has improved because there has been some mattes from Adept that I haven't been like exactly in love with. I think generally speaking they are a little bit on the harder press side, so there's not a lot of kick up. So if you don't like kick up, definitely the kind of formula you might enjoy. That being said, this yellow shade is notoriously hard to formulate as a pigment because of the just type of pigment it is. So I don't want to like knock it down because I understand that it's just a harder pigment to get it right, but I feel like I have shades like this that are better from other brands, and this one is just really hard to work with. It's for sure a stamping kind of shade. Maybe like if you want to do an all matte look and you want to just put it onto the inner portion of the lid and also use a lighter base, then I think you might get it to work, but I feel like it's really fussy. So not the biggest fan, but the rest of the mattes were really nice. I love the depth that I got from 77 and Boring Circuit, and I do really love that the shade is in here because it just allows so much more versatility with this palette overall. So those are my initial thoughts, which is actually a lot of initial thoughts to have on a palette, but I will keep you updated, as I mentioned, on my thoughts, and if anything changes. I am contemplating on bringing back my monthly palette ranking, so let me know in the comments below if you would like to see that. I will definitely be using this palette in the upcoming couple of weeks when I go into work, and let me know in the comments below if you pick this palette up or if you plan on it. Are you on the fence about it? I would love to hear your thoughts, and that's everything with this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.